A human man gets trapped in an alien woman's imagination. Dr. Ethan Cole stood in front of the biometric scanner with a mug of something pretending to be coffee in one hand and a datapad cradled in the other. The coffee, like most beverages brewed aboard Research Station 9, tasted vaguely like melted plastic and broken promises. He grimaced, gulped the last of it anyway, and exhaled loudly. The door hissed open. Inside Lab 7B, a curved, sterile chamber, gleaming with polished white surfaces and soft blue pulse lighting, the air smelled faintly of ozone and ambition. Lysera was already seated in the center of the neural sync chamber, legs crossed, silver robes folded neatly around her like she'd been carved from serenity itself. Her long ears twitched slightly at his entrance. She didn't look at him, but the corner of her lips curled, the sort of smile that promised either great wisdom or a prank involving irreversible psychological consequences. "You're late," she said, voice smooth, accent curling around his language like silk over wires. "I prefer to think unpredictable," Ethan replied, dropping into the swivel chair beside the control array. "You wouldn't want a punctual man syncing with your mind. That's just boring." "You are already boring," she said, eyes closed. "But at least you amuse me." Ethan muttered something about charming aliens and flipped through the data interface, syncing their neural fields with the slow click of toggles and chirp of confirmation lights. The sync halo, a flexible metallic ring embedded with quantum sensors and nanothreads, lowered above Lysera's head. She didn't flinch. She never did. "You ready?" he asked, fingers hovering over the initiation command. "I was born ready. You humans just like to ask that question so you don't feel unprepared." "Fair, very fair." He tapped the control pad. Lights dimmed. The halo pulsed. Lysera inhaled slowly. Ethan felt the moment, that thin, breathless instant where consciousness tilted and logic went soft around the edges. And then, suddenly, everything stopped. Not gradually, not with warning, just snap. Gone. No lab, no chair, no blinking lights or passive-aggressive temperature regulation system he'd been meaning to recalibrate. Just a sky, not his sky. This one sparkled with purple suns orbiting each other like dance partners at a masquerade. The clouds above him were shaped like massive, drifting jellyfish, their tendrils raining glowing droplets that somehow avoided soaking his shirt. He stood on a field of obsidian grass that felt like velvet under his boots. Somewhere to his left, a chorus of hummingbirds sang classical jazz. One of them wore a bow tie. "This is either a dream," he muttered, "or I drank expired protein shake again." "You're inside my mind." The voice came from behind him, but he didn't turn. Not at first. He was too busy staring at the floating rock formations in the distance. Massive, spiraling stones orbiting a central monolith shaped like a hand flipping the bird. Subtle. He finally spun around. There she was, Lysera. Only this version shimmered faintly at the edges, her long ears adorned with glimmering gold cuffs and her eyes glowing just a shade too bright to be natural. "I'm inside your mind," he repeated. "That seems premature. We haven't even had lunch." She smiled. "You initiated a deeper sync than your instruments could measure. The moment you let go of control, you were absorbed." Ethan blinked. "Absorbed is a really concerning word, Lysera. We usually reserve that for acid or cults." "This is a mind space," she explained, walking toward him across the velvet grass. "My imagination shaped by memory, emotion, and design. It reflects my internal self." He glanced back at the clouds. "So your internal self is full of judgmental sky jellyfish and sarcastic floating rocks?" "Your presence is already influencing it," she added with a sniff. "That bird hand monolith, for instance, wasn't here before." "Proud of that one," Ethan said. "Might make it my profile picture." She ignored him. He tried to walk, but the ground shifted, suddenly rippling like fabric beneath his steps. He yelped, stumbled, and fell flat on his back. "Is this part of the tour?" "No," Lysera said, gazing down at him with what could only be described as affectionate pity. "That was your own fear response. You feared the ground would shift, so it did." "Oh, great," he muttered, brushing off imaginary dust. "So this whole place is like an interdimensional mood ring with an attitude problem." Lysera offered a hand. He took it. Her touch was warm and oddly grounding, despite the impossibility of it all. "Can I go back?" he asked. "Like, out? Back to my boring, coffee-deprived body?" She tilted her head. "Why would you want to leave? You've only just arrived." "Because it's your imagination," he said. And mine has a strict no long-eared emissary policy. Her smile widened. You joke now, but you'll see. My mind is far more fascinating than your world of paperwork and cafeteria food. He opened his mouth to argue, but the sky exploded with laughter. Actual laughter, rolling waves of sound that shook the air and sent a flock of polygonal flamingos soaring overhead. What was that? He asked. My subconscious amused, she said. It finds your discomfort delightful. You know, most hosts offer their guests tea or something. I offered you the rare privilege of neural immersion? Tea seems pedestrian, he sighed. Can we at least set some ground rules? Like no more creepy telepathic laughs? Maybe a ban on terrain that tries to eat me? Lysera raised her hand. The ground beneath him morphed instantly, forming a glowing pathway of gently undulating tiles leading toward a distant crystalline city. It hovered in the air like an idea halfway between brilliance and delusion. Better, she asked. It's prettier, Ethan, but I'm not sure I trust any architecture that defies gravity and logic at the same time. You're in a place where neither of those laws apply. He stared at the pathway. It hummed. Okay, he said slowly. Lead the way, brain host, but if this ends in me being sacrificed to a psychic squid, I'm billing you for the therapy. Lysera laughed. The tiles lit up under her feet. The world, impossibly large and close and absurd, shimmered in every direction. Ethan followed. Because what else do you do when trapped in the mind of an alien diplomat with a flair for the theatrical? Apparently, you walk, you survive, you improvise, and you pray to the sky jellyfish that your insurance covers interdimensional consciousness entanglement. The tiles lit up one by one beneath Ethan's feet like a red carpet designed by a hallucinating quantum engineer. Every step chimed with a note from a forgotten symphony, and every few paces the pitch changed completely. Like the path was tuning itself to the rhythm of his anxiety. So, Ethan said, glancing sideways at Lysera, what exactly are we walking toward? Please say it's not your childhood trauma disguised as a haunted amusement park. Lysera smiled without looking at him. Why do you assume it's trauma? Because I work in alien neurology, and I've seen the inside of a Trevarn mind. Their entire hippocampus was a reenactment of their failed high school musical. That sounds oddly beautiful, she replied. It was cats, Lysera, in Trevarn. That's a combination that should never happen again. She laughed softly, and the tiles underfoot briefly turned into sponge cake before returning to their glowing geometric precision. I'm walking on dessert now? It's a glitch, she said with a shrug. Your sense of metaphor is leaking. Good to know. If I start hallucinating a buffet table of my insecurities, let me know. Ahead, the city grew larger, clearer. Towers of glass and chrome swirled like DNA strands, drifting slowly above a lake that shimmered with starlight. But as they approached, the structures warped in small, twitching bursts. Buildings flexed like muscle, reshaped themselves with a ripple, then returned to stillness as if nothing had happened. Yeah, no, that's totally normal, Ethan muttered. Architecture that's self-conscious, not terrifying at all. It's responding to you. I'm just walking. You're also skeptical, confused, and mildly hungry. The environment mirrors state-of-mind parameters. They reached a bridge, if it could be called that. The structure was composed of interlocking thought bubbles, each filled with flickering memories that played like short films. Lysera's early training in Alari Minecraft, her first experience with human ice cream, a brief montage of a failed pottery class that ended in what looked like a telekinetic explosion, and one very distressed instructor. You have a very expressive imagination, Ethan said, peering into one of the bubbles, and that's the most polite way I can describe a psychic bridge made of your blooper reel. Lysera touched a bubble. It flickered to reveal a child version of herself, sitting cross-legged in a meditation chamber, eyes wide with concentration. Tiny sparks danced over her skin like lightning trapped in curiosity. This was the first time I split my consciousness, she said. I was 6. Sure, and I was still figuring out how to pee without hitting the wall. They stepped onto the bridge. The bubbles trembled, then stabilized beneath their feet. Each step brought a different scene, a new glimpse, a kaleidoscope of emotion and memory. Ethan paused at one where Lysera, now a teenager, sat on a rooftop under twin moons, clutching something tight in her hand. A crystal? A pendant? He couldn't quite tell. You missed someone, he said. She nodded, quiet. He was the first person I tried to bond with, fully, Thought for thought, it failed. Ethan wanted to say something comforting, but the bridge rippled violently underfoot. Okay, is this a normal grief response? Or did I trigger a danger, emotional intimacy detected alarm? Lysera raised her hand, stabilizing the memory structure with a pulse of thought. The bridge settled. This place isn't always safe, she said, especially when things get close to the core. They crossed the final stretch and stepped onto the city's threshold. Immediately, Ethan felt something shift. The air thickened with awareness. Buildings turned toward them, or maybe he just imagined it. The sky shimmered above like liquid glass. A figure stepped out from behind a pillar. Human-shaped, cloaked in shadow, with a mirrored face that reflected Ethan's own expression back at him. "Oh no," Ethan muttered. "I've read enough psychology manuals to know what this is." Lysera's eyes narrowed. "I didn't summon that." The mirrored figure tilted its head. Ethan tilted his head. The figure mimicked him perfectly, down to the tiny twitch of his jaw. "Okay, creepy clone version of myself. I have enough self-dumbing my therapy trip." "You brought it with you," Lysera said quietly. "It's a projection." "I don't project," he started, but the mirrored Ethan raised its hand and spoke in his exact voice. "You're terrified you're not enough, that she brought you here because she needed something disposable." "I don't sound like that," Ethan whispered. "Yes, you do," Lysera said helpfully. The mirrored figure stepped closer. "You joke to deflect. You hide in logic. You're out of your depth." Ethan clenched his jaw. "Wow, I didn't know my subconscious had such a punchable face." "You must confront it," Lysera said. "Confront it?" Ethan hissed. "You mean like emotionally? That's asking a lot for someone who just last week cried at a commercial for universal bandwidth." He stepped forward. "Listen, you copycat emotional parasite, I am out of my depth. That's basically my natural state. But I'm not disposable. I'm just very reusable, like a very confused, highly educated spork." Then flickered, warped, and disappeared in a burst of static. "Huh?" Ethan said. "Turns out sarcasm is therapeutic." Lysera touched his shoulder. "You're adapting faster than I expected." "Please never say that again. That sounds like I'm about to grow scales." She laughed again. The sound echoed down the chrome streets, and the city around them briefly brightened, as if the structures themselves appreciated humor. Then came the low hum. Not mechanical, not natural. It thrummed from below, vibrated through the tiles, and sent a tremor up Ethan's legs. "What's that?" Lysera turned, face suddenly serious. "A boundary is forming." "What kind of boundary?" "Cognitive. Instinctual. My mind is pushing back. So it's mad that I punch my shadow clone with words? No, it's recognizing you as an independent presence. That makes you dangerous." Ethan groaned. "Well, that's just peachy. So now your brain is trying to evict me?" "Not yet," she said, "but we should move." They headed deeper into the city, the buildings beginning to blur at the edges like wet paint sliding down glass. Somewhere, a loudspeaker declared, "Warning, unauthorized empathy detected." Did your imagination just sass me? It's evolving. Can it evolve toward fewer automated insults and more snacks? Ahead, the street split into two. One path led to a glowing tower shaped like a spiral seashell. The other descended into shadow. Lysera paused. "Your instincts will shape this part. You must choose." Ethan looked at both, frowned, then pointed to the shadowy path. "Why that one?" Lysera asked. "Because I'm too curious to live, and clearly, nothing says personal growth like walking into literal darkness." She followed him, laughing softly. The shadows swallowed them. The city behind shimmered once and faded. And somewhere deep in the folds of Lysera's mind, something stirred. Watching, listening, and chuckling. The path into the darkness was suspiciously well paved. Ethan found that more unsettling than the actual shadows. Perfectly laid tiles, not a single crack or bit of mossy overgrowth. He nudged one with his foot. "Okay, either this part of your mind has OCD or it's trying way too hard to impress me." Lysera walked beside him with measured steps, her long ears twitching slightly at sounds he couldn't hear. "This path wasn't here before." "You say that a lot. I'm starting to think I'm basically a walking hallucination magnet." She didn't answer immediately. The darkness ahead wasn't empty. It shimmered faintly, like someone had spilled the universe's screensaver over reality. As they passed under an archway made entirely of light fractals and bad decisions, Ethan's term, not Lysera's, the temperature dropped a few degrees. "So," Ethan began, glancing around at what he now recognized as floating, whispering orbs shaped like his worst high school essays. Your brain has a haunted library wing? Not haunted, guarded. By shame, she said calmly. By questions I never answered. One of the orbs floated close to Ethan's face. A whisper slipped from it like breath. Why do you smile when you feel alone? He swatted it away like a judgmental balloon. Okay, nope, not today, self-reflection demon. Lysera waved her hand, and the orbs drifted upward. The path forked again. One direction led to a tunnel pulsing with green energy and oddly enthusiastic accordion music. The other echoed with a low hum and what sounded disturbingly like dozens of tiny creatures reciting motivational slogans in unison. You pick, Ethan said. I chose the last spooky metaphor hallway, and we both almost got eaten by a sarcasm hydra. Lysera hesitated, closed her eyes, and pointed to the green tunnel. This way. But stay close. This area is volatile. Define volatile, he muttered. On a scale from spilled coffee to accidental planetary annihilation, more like accidentally introducing romantic confusion to a hive mind. Ah, so the usual Tuesday at Intergalactic Diplomacy Club. They entered the tunnel. The walls pulsed like veins, which Ethan tried very hard not to interpret. The accordion music grew louder. Up ahead, a large metallic structure hovered in midair, spinning slowly. It looked like a giant Rubik's Cube designed by a philosopher who had too much time and access to quantum materials. What is that? A memory stabilizer, Lysera said. I built it when I was 17. It contains emotional redundancies. It replays specific experiences in loops so I can study outcomes. You made a time loop simulator. At 17, I was still trying to figure out if cereal could technically count as dinner. She approached the structure and placed a hand on it. Instantly, a window opened, not visually but mentally, and Ethan was yanked forward into it like a sock into a black hole. He landed on his feet in a bit. Aliens of all kinds walked past, tall feathered ones, squat translucent ones, and one that looked like a disappointed salad. Above them, signs flickered in 17 languages. And in the center stood Lysera, younger, her robes simple, her posture stiff. I don't like how easily I get dragged into memories, Ethan muttered. I feel like someone's poorly backed up USB drive. You are a guest, Lysera said beside him, now in her current form. The memory doesn't recognize you, so you'll remain invisible. Perfect, he said. Just what I always wanted, psychic voyeurism. They watched as younger Lysera approached a delegation of human scientists. Ethan recognized one of them, Dr. Hampton, his old xenolinguistics professor. Ethan waved instinctively. Dr. Hampton walked straight through him. That never stops being weird. Lysera gestured toward her younger self, who was now speaking, stiff and formal. This was my first direct interaction with humanity. I was trying to read emotional intent through facial micro-expressions. I had not yet realized you all smile when lying. That is deeply true and mildly hurtful. A loud pop echoed in the plaza, followed by several humans ducking for cover. One of the floating security drones had malfunctioned and was now playing opera at maximum volume while shooting confetti in all directions. Young Lysera didn't move. She simply watched the humans scatter with a slight tilt of her head. I remember this, Ethan said. This was in a paper, the confetti incident. You were described as unflappable. I didn't know how to react. I hadn't yet formed a reaction pattern for chaotic celebration mistaken for attack. I mean, you've described most human behavior right there. The memory flickered, froze, and dissolved. They were back in the tunnel. The structure now hummed louder, its core turning red. Is red good? Ethan asked. No, red means instability. You altered the resonance with your thoughts. My thoughts were mostly about how weird it is that someone made a weaponized confetti drone. That was enough. The tunnel shook. From the far end, something emerged, a shape Ethan couldn't quite process. It was like trying to look at a thought you hadn't finished having. It shimmered, blurred, and spoke in a voice like everyone he'd ever disappointed. Okay, no thank you, he said, backing up. I don't need an encounter with my unfinished self-awareness today. Lysera stepped forward. It's not yours, it's mine. The entity pulsed. I named it the question. Lysera raised her hand. It is the doubt that I buried when I agreed to the telepathic sync project. What doubt? That bringing a human into my mind would break something. Ethan opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Well, that's alarmingly specific. It was hypothetical. she added, until you arrived. The entity floated closer. Hey now, Ethan said. Look, I may be metaphorical chaos wrapped in a lab coat, but I didn't mean to break anything. You didn't, Lysera said, but your presence amplifies what I hide. This being exists because I denied it. The entity lunged. Ethan instinctively raised his arms and projected a shield made of pure sarcasm. It shimmered like rainbow snark. The entity hit it and bounced off, visibly offended. Lysera blinked. You created a defense field? It's powered by all the times I deflected criticism with humor, basically an infinite source. The entity hesitated, pulsed once, then faded. Lysera turned to him, visibly surprised. You altered the rules. Technically, I just played by them. I'm in your mind. That means my instincts count, right? She considered it. That is not how this usually works. Ethan grinned. Welcome to my brand of neurology. Equal parts improve and caffeine withdrawal. The tunnel walls settled. The structure dimmed to green. The path ahead cleared, revealing a staircase made of thought threads and glimmering impulse. Next stop? Ethan asked. Emotional archives. Can't wait to unpack your dream journal. As they climbed, the tunnel behind them faded, and somewhere above, the stars inside her imagination rearranged themselves slightly, as if to make room. The staircase made absolutely no sense by any standard of architecture, physics, or basic emotional stability. It coiled upward through nothingness, suspended between layers of cognition that shimmered with phrases Ethan could barely comprehend. Things like dormant longing and subconscious revisions pending. Each step hummed a tone as he touched it, as if trying to remember what music was supposed to be. Does your brain sing? Ethan asked, pausing as one particularly enthusiastic step launched into a four-note harmony that sounded suspiciously like a jingle for mind insurance. It resonates, Lysera said, walking ahead without looking back. These threads form part of the archive gate. You must approach it with balanced intent. I don't even approach breakfast with balanced intent. The higher they climbed, the air seemed to get. Not physically, but mentally. Thoughts got stickier. Memories tried to whisper. At one point, Ethan caught the smell of his grandmother's soup, and for 2 steps, he swore he was 9 years old again, desperately trying to convince a bowl of vegetables to taste like pizza. Did I just relive a traumatic dinner? You brushed a memory coil, Lysera said. Don't worry, it's only temporary. Great! If I suddenly believe in the tooth fairy again, promise you won't let me write it into your brain. At the summit, the stairs opened onto a platform that was both a room and a map, and maybe also a metaphor. Layers of glowing filaments stretched out in every direction, forming a web that pulsed with information. Within it drifted scenes, some sharp, some hazy, suspended like files in a dream-based cloud storage. This is where I keep everything I can't delete, Lysera said. Like an emotional recycle bin, more like an off-site backup of existential confusion. They stepped into the web. Ethan instinctively ducked as a floating memory zoomed past him and projected a scene of Lysera trying to parallel park a hovercraft in what appeared to be a wedding procession. I'm so glad your dignity is optional in here, Ethan said. Lysera narrowed her eyes. That was an extremely tense situation. The hovercraft was on fire. I said tense. They walked deeper into the archive. The memories grew quieter, less dramatic, more personal. One showed Lysera as a child again, curled up under a dome of stars, whispering into a broken communicator. Another revealed her laughing with an older Alari, whose face Ethan instinctively understood as important, though he didn't know why. Your mother? Lysera nodded. She taught me to mask my thoughts, to hide the sharp ones. The sharp ones? Desires, needs. They can damage others if not contained. Right? That explains why my last relationship felt like dating a safety brochure. A pulse ran through the archive, a low thrum, something shifting, something big. What was that? Ethan asked, glancing upward as several memory threads realigned on their own. The archive just indexed you. I didn't submit myself. You didn't need to. Prolonged presence within my cognition initiates emotional imprinting. Ethan blinked. So I just got added to your permanent record? Essentially. Does it come with a grade? A new thread appeared before them. Bright, pulsing, new. It hovered close, then spun slowly to reveal. Ethan. Or at least a memory of Ethan, laughing, smirking, running his mouth about something, possibly space cafeteria food. Then it shifted, showing him defending her in the tunnel, shielding them both with snark and nervous courage. "Is that your first impression on my subconscious?" He frowned. "I look sleep-deprived." "You were." Another tremor ran through the web. This time, several memory strands snapped, recoiling like cut wires. "Is your brain supposed to do that?" "No." A wave of static swept over the platform. The archive trembled. Dozens of memories flickered, blinked out, or merged with others. One fragment began looping aggressively, a moment of Lysera looking into a mirror and not recognizing her reflection. "I'm guessing that's not part of the standard tour." "No," she said quietly. "Something's rewriting the structure." "Could it be? Me?" "Not exactly. It's not you. It's the reaction to you. The mind is adapting too quickly. Adaptive neurocognition. I remember the warnings. Emotional contact accelerates divergence. Yes, my subconscious is no longer solely mine." A figure emerged from the collapsing threads. At first it was nothing. Then it was Ethan. Then it was Lysera. Then it was both, merged and flickering, with too many limbs and too few distinctions. "Okay, I really don't like when your imagination plays Mad Libs with our identities. It's a construct, a hybrid of our emotional signatures. This should not be happening." The construct tilted its head and spoke with both their voices. "You are inside each other's fears." Ethan backed up. "I don't remember signing up for psychic cohabitation with a horror show avatar. It's feeding on unresolved tension." "Oh great, so we're being haunted by unspoken feelings and awkward glances?" "Essentially." The construct stepped closer. Ethan raised a finger. "Listen here, glitchy metaphor ghost. I've been inside more confusing minds than yours. One time I telepathically linked with a sentient spreadsheet. Do you know what it's like to feel rows and columns judge your every thought?" The construct didn't respond. It just stared, then split into multiple smaller versions of itself, all echoing half-formed thoughts, incomplete desires, threads of emotion that never finished loading. "Okay," Ethan said. "Now it's just showing off." Lysera stepped forward. "We can't fight it directly. It's part of..." "So what do we do?" She turned to him. "We finish what we started. The sync, full emotional transparency, no barriers." Ethan paled. "You mean honesty? Complete." "Lysera, I once lied to avoid admitting I liked the musical adaptation of Solar Wars. I'm not ready for radical truth." She smiled faintly. "Then start small." The construct paused, twitching. Ethan exhaled. "Okay, fine, here's the truth. I didn't want to study your mind because of research. I was curious. About you. Your silence, your eyes, your weird floating stares. You fascinate me, and it scared me more than I wanted to admit." Lysera's eyes softened. "And I pulled you in because I was lonely, because connection felt safer in a dream than in the real world." The construct shuddered. The fragments began to dissolve. Light returned to the archive. Ethan looked around. "Did we just therapy our way out of psychic collapse?" "For now," Lysera said, "but this space is no longer stable." "What happened?" "You stay too long and we merge." Ethan blinked. "Like, become one being? Or worse, one mind, no distinction, no boundaries." He stared at her. "Lysera, I make jokes when I'm nervous. You don't want to be trapped in that loop." She smiled sadly. "That's what I'm afraid of." Above them, the archive began to fracture. They both looked up, then at each other. Then they ran. They didn't so much run as ricochet through cognition. Every corridor of Lysera's mindscape bent, shifted, reshaped itself ahead of them. Logic peeled away in layers, and Ethan was pretty sure he briefly turned into a metaphor for indecisiveness. "Did I just become a traffic jam?" "Briefly," Lysera said, yanking him through a tunnel lined with glowing neurons. "But only in an abstract sense." "Wonderful. Next time I want to explore someone's subconscious, remind me to stick with mine. It's full of movie quotes and bad cafeteria memories." The thread bridge ahead cracked. Ethan leapt. The void below whispered things like impulse control is a myth, and you left the stove on in 2017. He landed, stumbled, and somehow rolled into a hallway lined with floating spheres, each one holding a joke he'd once told but never laughed at himself. "Okay, this one's just petty." "Your unresolved humor loop," Lysera said. "Apparently it thinks you owe it closure." "I don't owe anybody anything, except that vending machine on level B. It took my credits and my dignity." They burst through a final membrane of thought. Beyond it was the mind's core, the convergence nexus, shaped like a glowing star folded inside a cathedral of memory. And inside it, the construct was waiting. It had grown. No longer a flickering hybrid, it was now towering, stable, eerily calm. It looked like both of them, but aged in opposite directions. Ethan weathered and stern, Lacera youthful and wild-eyed. "This place is stabilized," Ethan whispered. "It chose form, identity. It's trying to finish the murder." The construct stepped forward. Its voice no longer echoed. It harmonized. "You are the same now." Ethan shook his head. "Nope. Hard pass. I already share a brain with my inner monologue. That guy's enough of a roommate." "You fear sameness," the construct said. "She fears isolation. You are solutions to each other." Lacera looked up. "That's not how connection works." "It is efficient," it replied. Ethan sighed, and tragically lacking in sarcasm. The construct turned. "You joke to delay truth." "I joke because honesty is terrifying, and because if you don't laugh at the chaos, it wins." The construct paused. Ethan stepped forward. "I didn't come here to be rewritten, and neither did she. We didn't ask to be each other's solution. We chose to connect. Then why resist the merge? Because being close isn't about becoming the same person. It's about staying different and choosing to stay close anyway." The construct wavered. Cracks rippled across its surface. Lacera raised her hand. "You were formed from fear, not choice, from a moment of emotional imbalance." "You exist because we tried to hide what we wanted," Ethan said. "But now we're not hiding." They stood together. The construct flared, tried to split into thousands of copies, then fractured all at once, exploding into light and whisper and a really unfortunate flash of Ethan's worst haircut from 2083. The core pulsed once more, then dimmed. Everything around them folded away. The threads, the archives, the catwalks made of unresolved metaphors. Gone. They were back. Back in the chamber, in the real world, Lacera seated in her meditative brace, Ethan crumpled on the floor with his lab coat half twisted around his arm like it had tried to abandon ship. The lights overhead were blinking erratically, like even the power grid had questions. "Okay," Ethan said, breathing hard. "We lived. Your mind didn't eat me. That's a win." Lacera opened her eyes. "The sync terminated with partial imprint retention." "English, please. We remember each other, but we are not entangled." "Good, I'm allergic to metaphysical codependency," she smiled faintly. "You adapted well." "I barely adapted at all. I just panicked in a charming, semi-productive way." "You faced the parts of me I avoid? You faced me wearing a lab coat and emotional baggage. Pretty sure that evens out." She stood, unfolding with the calm grace of someone who had just survived a cerebral revolution. "The council will want a report. Mine will mostly be footnotes and screaming." They walked to the door. The chamber's interface chimed at them like a very polite toaster. "Ethan," she said, just as the door hissed open, "you are still in my memory." "Yeah," he said. "Well, you're stuck in mine too, specifically the part with the stairs that judged me." Outside, the research complex was as sterile and humming as ever, but something felt different, lighter. The air didn't carry the weight of a mind on the verge of collapse. Later, over coffee that tasted suspiciously like ambition and regret, Ethan stared at his report screen and typed, "Subject remains neurologically intact." Psychic synchronization yielded unexpected mutual insight. Recommend further diplomatic interaction, preferably outside neural space. Recommend snacks. Lacera sent her own notes to the council. She did not mention the construct. She did not mention the moment Ethan laughed in the archive when everything else was breaking. But she kept the memory. They met again 3 days later. He brought a deck of cards, claiming it was to help establish trust through friendly deception. She brought a fruit from her world that could only be safely eaten if you didn't think about it too hard. They talked. About science, about fears, about the absurdity of brains pretending to be planets. Neither of them mentioned the merge. They didn't have to. And somewhere in the back of Lacera's mind, quiet, content, and no longer flickering, a version of Ethan smiled. He was wearing a better haircut. The end.